is just spending that time in the studio. I don't know that it's necessarily that I get bored with a certain form, but just like making that form repeatedly, like sometimes I'm like, oh, what if I tried this instead? Or
Momentum's the best
Yeah.
inspiration, I think.
yeah, it is. And I don't know, just mentally sometimes if I'm not in the studio for a period of time, I kind of get in a funk. And then I should know by now that it's just that I need to be back in the studio, because then I'll have a good full day in the studio and it's like, oh wow, this feels so good. Why didn't I realize that's what I needed? This winter I made, I'm not really sure what I think about these yet either, but I made these ceramic hooks, like coat hooks, which I kind of, it might be a little hip too, like all this DIY movement, that kind of stuff, but I think stuff like that is kind of fun. And I do remember when I was in undergrad going over to pottery sales in the Penland area, and Cynthia Bringle would make these ceramic hooks, coat hooks, and a few, I mean, she made some kind of cheesy stuff. Do you guys all know Cynthia? She's like very established, well-known potter in North Carolina.
What's your last name?
Bringle. She was really involved with Penland. She lives right by the Penland School. But, I don't know, I feel like somebody like that can get away with making coat hooks, then I think I can do it. But it's kind of fun. I sold them at my holiday sale. It was the first time I have sold any of them. Like I'd give them away to friends and things. But I sold them for like $15, and it is kind of nice to have something that pretty much anybody could buy. I don't know. I don't do any craft fairs, so I never really have either. I've done a few sales, like I've done the Demarest sale, and I've done Art of the Pot and things like that, where you go but you don't have to take your booth. So I feel pretty fortunate in that way that I've never even built a booth.
How did you get inspired to do the little feet like that? Was it something that you had seen, or you just...
It's been so long that I honestly don't remember, but I know I started making them in grad school, and it's kind of a frustrating time in school where I was like really being challenged and pushed to make pots that were like more of my own voice, or like my own. I remember being told, I think sometimes I just tell young potters this, that I was making generic pots, which, some of it was true, but I think it was just kind of really pushing me to make my own pots.
Critique pushed you, right?
Yeah. So I was wanting to make pots that related more to animals, and that were more gestural, so I was trying to come up with different solutions for the foot. And I don't think I saw anyone making them this way. I've seen people do it since then. But I don't think I didn't go to a demo and see somebody do it and then go back to my studio and try it.
Yeah, she's got little animals on the top and the sides. Snakes,
Yeah.
turtles.
Yeah, so going back to those hooks, I think they're kind of fun too. And it's just like pulling a handle. You just pull a handle, kind of curl it up. Pretty simple.
I was going to ask you if it was like one of those little feet but blown up.
That would be a cool thing too.
For a hook.
And then the batch of them that I made for the holiday sale that we did, I I took a bunch of bike parts and had these textures in the hooks, and then I made a bunch of Christmas ornaments too. Sometimes I feel like, man, these things are so cheesy. Kind of borderline embarrassing, but they're fun to make, and I don't know, like you couldn't even really tell they were made out of like the patterns I was pressing were bike parts, but I thought that was kind of cool too. And kind of going back to like building community and getting people to come out to your sales and stuff, a lot of my friends in the community are bikers, so they were into that, so it was kind of like getting a different crowd of people to buy art, even if it is the cheesy stuff.
Ever made a whole pottery bike?
No. Emmett made some Christmas ornaments with me, and he made some little bikes. They were pretty cool. But I think it's good to kind of like, I don't know, just like listeners like this or anything that we do, if you can like somehow, we were talking about this last night about combining different organizations or, I don't know. So like getting like these biker friends that like they don't have any ceramics in their house and having them come to my sale I think is pretty cool, and then just educate them a little and have something that they, like, I don't know, they would never buy like a $50 pot, but if a bunch of them wanted those little hooks and Christmas ornaments and thought they were cool, and maybe eventually they'll want to buy some bigger pieces, I don't know.
Yeah, once they start to appreciate them in
Yeah.
their lives, it's like we do it's sort of like the empty bowls thing. We call it the Super Bowl that we do here, and like it gets a pot and everybody's covered in the community, and people love it. Might be the only handmade,
Yeah.
certainly in their kitchen, it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the ancient pre-Columbian pots too. Made a lot of animals.
I think making an event out of stuff too, it's always makes it
I think with sales, you have to touch everybody's economic too.
Yeah.
Like you said, somebody buy a hook and might lead them to something else.
Yeah.
Just because
yeah, like later on in their life when
so you
they're
can't
in a
ever think of it as
position.
being cheesy as
Yeah.
it's just a vessel to get more people.
gateway drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about making some more of that, like different things like that. Like in my kitchen, all of my knobs and my cabinets, a potter friend of mine made. And so I'm thinking I should make that, or just like handle pulls and things. Home decor.
Should do commemorative. Every year you do something and they gotta have that for the next year.
That's a
because
good idea.
It's part of
Yeah.
like something as simple as maybe even back in Ohio, the houses were a big thing, the ceramic houses, villages.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, we made them out of wood, and every year they had to have the new one. So you knew that was guaranteed income right there.
At my sale, I had my bike helmet hanging up on a hook. So I was really like, you guys all need one of these to hang your helmet on.
Yeah. Does your family have all kinds of your stuff?
They do, and it's interesting, the stuff that they use. They display a lot of it. My parents remodeled their kitchen right when I was graduating undergrad. And so I gave them all of these pots that I'd made then, and they're still there. Like they're all along the tops of their cabinets. I go home and it's like, my undergrad show is right there. It's really funny.
That's pretty cute.
It's your museum.
Yeah. It's kind of embarrassing.
It's a little frightening when I go to my parents' house.
Well,
Something
to see
for
your
God's
progress, though,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, that's true.
you know, it's a little piece
It's
of
like your
history.
diary.
Yeah.
lid here.
I'm putting the bottom
On the
in here.
bottom.
Yep.
That's
But
it up.
my parents and my brother and sister, they all have, their set of all matching dishes. But they're pretty, at least my parents, they use the coffee mugs and they use like serving things. But they still have like their set of matching.
Everyday wear.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like, my mom uses a lot of serving bowls, platter kind of things, almost daily. And then the mugs they use every morning. But if I give them any other kind of pot, it either goes on display or just like sits in the back of the cabinet. Even my brother and sister, like, I just noticed my sister put up a picture on Facebook the other day. It was like, I gave her one of these batter bowls for Christmas. And it was like out on her little side table on display. Like, that thing is so functional. I keep using it. And I was so disappointed in her at Christmas. She gave me, and she gave my grandma this, and I know she was like, it was genuine, and she was like trying to be a good grandchild, and my sister has 2 little boys, so she took her kids to one of those, I think, a paint it yourself place.
Yeah.
Or something. It was like from her kids, so it was like to great grandma, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, I could have made you like a nice cup. It might not have even been a paint it yourself. It might have just said like, had their names, and just, it was like a very commercial looking cup. And then the other thing that she did, which I think was mostly Kyle, her husband, those they're really into those Moscow mules right now. So
Mules.
the other big
Copper
thing was
cups.
copper cups, and I'm just like, why are you guys buying copper cups? Like, I get it, like that's what you serve that drink in. But come on. You of all people should be supporting potters.
I have all my kids' stuff from every piece of pottery they did from the time they were in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, camp, and they come home and they go, why do you have those out? Because, well, number 1, I paid for them. Number 2, it's so cute. I know, it's so cute.
It has their energy in it.
That's
If
right.
they make it.
That's right. I remember every camp they did every pinch pot in. It's just what moms do. Yeah, I'm gonna try. 'Cause I gotta order a few more things. For breakfast. He skipped out. I know. I could ask my husband to do it.
Do you put your pottery in the dishwasher?
I do.
Really?
Yep. I think it's all dishwasher safe, microwave safe.
Oven.
I do that too, and I know you're not supposed to. And I try to like not preheat the oven, but sometimes I forget. And I've never had a problem. Yeah, I make a lot of quiche and different casseroles.
Or did you hear you're not supposed to?
Yeah, I've always thought.
I have casseroles and stuff I cook in all the time.
You don't put them in a preheated oven though, you put it.
Well, yeah, I don't try to, take them
Shop.
from
That's
the
what I-
refrigerator and stick them in the oven.
Yeah.
Whatever. Try to heat them a little, but I don't know how to try them.
I have one pot from I'm spacing out on her name. She makes the cook on clay pots. Robbie LaBelle. She lives up on Whidbey Island in Washington. But she makes these flameware pots. They're really amazing. They're beautiful and like super functional. Like you can even cook on them on the stovetop.
Wow.
She's
my
got
gosh.
this clay formulated
Wow.
to withstand that heat.
Or yeah, I used a porcelain pie dish for years. Pie plate. You know.
What causes it that you can do that? Does she use some really strong
I don't know.
clay
I don't
or
know
clay?
Massively grogged
Well,
sculpture clay.
I understand it is like lithium oxide,
Uh,
as it's like the expansion rate is negative somehow. It's like that added.
wedge it into your clay or something.
Well, it's into
Yeah.
the clay body,
Yeah.
and then it's like kind of limited on your glaze palette because a little lithium pulls so much
Sounds
out.
really expensive. Isn't the
Yeah.
lithium pretty expensive?
Susan would always throw extra silica when she was making those big casseroles.
Uh-huh.
She claimed that would help it between the texture.
She puts like granite in her clay bodies too, right? Yeah, Susan would know. She's really into cooking. She would definitely know.
The other thing about putting pots in the dishwasher, I have a few pots that have luster on them. And you know, you're always warned, like you shouldn't put them in the dishwasher, or well, you definitely can't put them in the microwave, but spark. But I just stopped doing that, and I've done it for years, and I can't even tell. Like the luster is still there.
Instead of slapping
And
on there.
Andy Grayman did that whole project for a little while where he was like doing some decoration under the luster so that it would reveal itself as you use it. It's like
Secret method.
yeah, but it's been years and nobody's like been able to get the luster to even start to come off. So I'm like, whatever, I'm just putting these in the dishwasher.
It depends on the glaze and how it holds up for sure.
Really is.
So when does the lid time come?
I'm gonna make the spout and handle first,
Oh.
and then the lid.
Those, I'm trying to remember their name, the Canadian guys that did the Mastering Con 6 Glazes book. Have you seen that? You know what I'm talking about? They do they give a lot of advice online, like they're chemists. And that book has all the details for how they created a way to do an accelerated dishwasher test. Do you know what I mean? So that
That's cool.
they have a test where they can, as if it went through the dishwasher 200 times. And they test all their glazes with this.
Wow.
You know, I don't know if that book's over there, but it's a really fascinating book. The two guys who wrote it are chemists, you know.
Yeah.
I think they presented it in Zico a lot.
I wish I knew more about that stuff. Like sometimes I wonder, I don't do too much glazing, but sometimes I wonder about the little bit of glazes that I use. There's this chun that I use, I don't even think it's a real chun glaze, but it almost seems like that yellow salt glaze, you know how that you can scratch it with your utensil? Like how sanitary is that?
Not.
Yeah. Do you think it matters though? Like
Depends on what's in it.
what food is in it or how you
Well, yeah, like it's like well, what's in the glaze? Like, is there, you know, whatever? Is there? I'm trying to think of something hazardous. Yeah, lead, for instance.
They wouldn't have
And
lead in
you
it.
know, you're scraping it, right?
Yeah.
It's a lead glaze.
They do can't use some of them.
But then what about,
You have to use
this doesn't happen much with the Shino I use, but you know how sometimes Shinos, if they leave those bubbles that don't necessarily like flux out.
Pick up blister.
Not necessarily a blister. Like when you apply the Shino and it's like looks like little pinholes, and some Shinos will flux out and smooth out, and then sometimes you gotta like rub them. I don't even know if that fixes it. Like when you're glazing it, you rub it.
Yeah.
And then they're still there in the glaze. Is that stuff sanitary? Like when it's fired and you can still see. It's not like a pinhole. I guess maybe it's sort of like a pinhole.
Actually, that Mastering Concept Glazes, you should read the whole. Did you read it? 'Cause that whole first chapter is really good about food safety, the whole issue, and you know, it gets really into glaze fit and like all the factors that make it safe or not, essentially. And they tested all sorts of commercial glazes and their own glazes. Like they're really into it. It's beyond me. But that book I thought was a particularly good coverage of the topic. Acidic foods and right. And, yeah.
Is that gonna be your spout?
Yeah.
But if you don't have hazardous like ingredients in the glaze,
Yeah.
then you don't have to worry about it so much, you know. Well, you want your glazes to hold up, right? You don't want them to.
Yeah.
That's how we want the
We started in the 70s. My own mother didn't know that.
Something wrong with that.
I know.
What did you say?
She's like, you're not gonna be 50, you're not that old.
She didn't know how old you were.
Thanks, Mom.
When I was 28 or 29, one of my friends told everybody I was turning 30. And I was like mortified.
That's so old, yeah.
It's like, I'm not 30.
So that means you're going to 58?
Like you can do the math. What did you say? I was born in 54. You're guessing. Too hard of math. She was a school teacher. Her brain had enough.
Is this the lid?
It's gonna be the spout. So the spout I roll a little bit thinner, at least as thin as the wall of the pot. Usually a little thinner, because if you make it too thick when you roll it up to form the spout, you get all those little surface cracks. And this is one of those things, kind of what I was talking about with trimming. When I started making these hand-built spouts, because I couldn't throw a spout that I liked, I started making these, I think in undergrad, making little hand-built spouts. And I'm sure now I could totally throw a spout that I like. And for a little while I was throwing some, but I really like the way these look too. But it's funny because I was making them because I didn't have the skills, and now I do, and I still do this process. So I have a template, which is kind of just a starting point, sort of. Because every teapot is a little bit different in this one. I usually will end up cutting it down quite a bit. And templates are kind of hard because the paper doesn't fold around the way that the clay does. So a lot of times, what I like to do if you want to use a template is to just make a bunch of spouts, and then once you figure out the one you like, open it back up and lay it on the paper and draw it. Because you can't like make a paper one and put it, like this isn't going to look like what the clay one looks like, the way that clay bends around.
You bevel cut that too.
I will. For some reason, I just get it cut out first and then I come back and do the bevels. So then these two sides where it's going to roll up, I cut those at a bevel. Like a 45 or maybe a little more. And to get it the right way, you flip it over and do it the same direction. This clay's so gooey. Just keeps sticking back to itself. And then this edge where the liquid's gonna pour out, I don't really like to cut that at a bevel. I just feel like that cut edge is so harsh. I want it to be a thinner edge than the wall, how it's just cut blunt right there. So I just kind of pinch it. And I think it just visually looks nicer than if I were to cut that at a bevel. And then I'll start to roll this up. So I like to make sure the edges have a nice roll to them. For some reason, usually the edge ends up being a little flatter, so I get that started first. And then roll the rest around. Cool. And I don't slip and score these. I've just found that, you know, this clay's right out of the bag. I can just stick it back together and it seems good. Do you make sure that it's joined together pretty well though? And then I like to be able to get my finger inside so I can bend the spout around to join it together better first. At home I'm definitely taking a lot more time with all of this, like making my seams kind of disappear. But trying to work a little quicker here. And I like to be able to get my finger in there so I can bend the tip of this spout. And this is like, it's mostly this part, and I'm gonna shape it even a little more in a minute, but the paper you can't do this with. So it's like all of these little fine-tuned things that you have your paper template, but you can never really see this part of it with the paper. So then, this is still like super giant and pretty awkward. I'm gonna just hold it up to the pot and see how much I should cut off the bottom of this. And so first I kind of figure out which side I want to put the spout on. And sometimes it's really clear, because I mean this pot's not totally symmetrical, and sometimes it's really clear like the direction that it seems like it wants to go, or if it's kind of tilted up in one direction. This one doesn't seem too obvious. I'm going to put the spout on this side. Just kind of seems like it's walking that way to me. So I'm like looking at the space under the feet and like the angle if this is tilted one way or another. So I'll just hold it. It'd be hard for you guys to see what I'm doing, but I'm just holding it behind here so I can see like how tall. So like as if it were attached, and like figuring out what angle I want it at and all of that stuff. And so one of the rules with teapots, you want if your pouring edge is too low, it's gonna dribble out before the pot's full. And I feel like with these pots, I kind of walk a fine line with that, because visually sometimes I like them when they're a little shorter rather than like way up here. But the pot's only ever going to be filled to right here where that flange is. So I try to get it the edge of the spout about that height. And I also want this curve down here to like flow up into the spout. So mark this angle of the pot, and then the trick is to draw it on the other side of the spout so that I cut it somewhat symmetrically. cutting this at a bevel and I'm kind of changing, or, how do I explain that? Cutting it like this angle all the way around. It's sticking back together, so I'm cutting it again. And then once I get it to this stage, then I'm gonna give the spout a little more shape again. Kind of give it a belly. And I think when you throw a spout, you often get this really nice belly to it. You can get a little more fullness than if you just make a straight slab spout. So I guess that's kind of what I'm going for by doing this last step. Just give it a little more shape. So that bevel I cut gives me like some area down here to really press the spout into the pot, and then at this top edge, I don't know why I started doing this. Instead of cutting that bevel, I just kind of roll it up a little. But that gives me a little surface area to really press into the pot when I attach it. And I'm always really bad about not getting it on there straight. But sometimes the pots, like, everything doesn't all line up. It might be straight with the rim, but not with the feet, or not with this part. So it's a little bit of a compromise, but just so that from most angles it kind of looks pretty straight. This one might be a little too low too. That's what I was saying. Like visually I think it looks really nice, but it probably will dribble. I'm just gonna stick it on there, but at home I would probably make another one. But see, like if you draw the line back here, I don't know. Just don't fill this pot up very full. And then, oh shoot, to mark it. I'm gonna mark where it's gonna attach. And the thing is, like, I could move it up a tiny bit, but if I move it up too much so that the rim or the edge of the spout is high enough, then I kind of lose that angle down there that I really like, where it just flows up into the spout. So I'm gonna draw where this needs to attach. And I usually put a bunch of little holes. I used to just cut out the whole thing, but I think structurally the wall of the pot has more integrity. It kind of holds its shape when you attach it. If you have all the holes, I'm not sure that I'd kind of like to listen in on Don Neely's Teapot demo.
There's a lot of details to the way he makes a teapot.
I don't ever want to have him critique my teapots.
He actually has little plaster molds that he's made. I think they're plaster or something that, you know what I mean, that he makes the integrated strainer over, that he fits them over.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's really precise about the whole concept.
Yeah, and I'm sure he knows like the size of the hole and for straining the tea leaves. And I don't know. I I think anymore. Like you just gotta make what you want to make. I think if you drink loose tea, I don't know. I'm sure probably some. You know, I don't know that much about those traditions, but I feel like if you drink loose tea, like it doesn't matter if you get a little bit in your cup.
Well, so I use that Nilly teapot at my house a
Yeah.
lot, actually. And some types of tea, his strainer catches it, and other ones
Yeah.
it doesn't catch it at all. I have to strain anyway. So.
I think after going to China too, where like you drink so much tea where your cup is just full of leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like don't drink
Yeah.
that last little bit.
Yeah. Right. It's that cowboy coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Can't leave your fortune if you don't have some tea leaves in the bottom.
Yeah.
I had no idea how many kinds of tea there were until I went to China.
Oh, I know,
was
it's
blown away.
crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, you know, his wife is Japanese, and I was asking her
Mhm.
so do you have a really nice teapot of John's that you use at home? And she was kind of like at my house. It's like the only pots that I have of mine are the ones that are too awful to sell, kind of thing. And she was like, yeah, we have this mismatched knitted one, and like, you know, and that's kind of funny because actually I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I think he'd want to have a certain
I bet
teapot
they
in his
have
house because
some-
they entertain
I bet they have a bunch of
other people's
real,
teapots.
like
Proper
other people's
Bobber's
teapots
kids.
and some from
Yeah.
Japan.
Yeah. He has really nice sake bottles and things at his
Mhm.
house. Actually, yeah, it's really cool. He's got a giant basket of, and it's all sake cups from potters all over the
Uh-huh.
world. Like, it's really neat. It's
That's cool.
full of it, you know. And it's collection. It's fun.
Probably you have to let it dry in there with all this stuff.
Oh yeah, you were there for Lorna Means thing. Did you go to John's house?
No. We went out to dinner. They might have, like, I was just there that one night. We all went to dinner that night. But she was there for a few days, I think.
Yeah, his wife makes sushi. Yeah, like she's an amazing cook. Food porn on Facebook all the time, you know? It's like unbelievable. Like there's
That's
this, you know, there's
awesome.
sort of the visual of
Yeah.
that kind of food, you
Yeah.
know? It's just like, yeah.
I don't know how to make this cartoon because I think
You leave about, what, a quarter of an inch between your holes and the outside edge.
I think so. I try to think about how thick the spout is.
it's ahi tuna. Fresh and it's raw. Yeah, I use it. I get from Victor Valley Market. You can eat it raw with the wasabi. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's a lot of wasabi powders and stuff. But that was my favorite thing. Well, they had calamari over there. Oh, yeah. They had calamari sandwiches, like a burger so big as a spam round.
So I want to just really gently press this together. Try not to put too many fingerprints in it.
put a coil around that?
Sometimes I'll put a coil right in there. This one I don't think I'll need to. Didn't cut this very well to match the curve of the pot.
Do you like having a flat spot on the bottom of the feet? Do you kind of set it down on the wet
This
feet?
I don't want it to be too flat. I think it depends on how soft the clay is when I make those feet. Because sometimes it will like really flatten out, and I don't really like that.
So you have to hold it in a different, hold it in your hand or make it dry, or what do you do?
Sometimes just let them sitting this way
Okay.
for a while till they stiffen up,
Okay.
and then set them upright.
There's a lot of steps for a
I know.
teapot.
Teapots are complicated.
Yeah, so complicated.
Yeah.
So we haven't even made the lid yet.
Lid, handle.
Yeah,
It's a lot of things you gotta get working together.
so cool.
It is
So
beautiful.
You do the handle next, or the
Yep,
lid?
I'll do the handle next, and then the lid's last.
You're still pinching it first.
Yeah. This is maybe too much clay. That's the thing with pulling handles off the pot. You really have to get a sense of how much clay, especially the way I like to let the bottom of the handle be thicker. If I pull it and it's too much clay and I cut the bottom off, then I lose all that thickness. So, try to really get it right in the beginning.
So I kinda gave up.
Just turn it down, it's been a lot of time. But every single time.
So do you wad the lid, or Greg was telling
I
me,
do.
wasn't it Greg telling me? Greg was telling me the other day about somebody who washes that spot, weren't you, with, wasn't that you? Washes the lid seat with like whiting or something?
Oh, it was
Not whiting, alumina hydrate or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, it was like an aluminum hydrate wax resist, and then you could put that on like
Yeah.
smaller galleries instead of having to wad them.
I've seen potters do that. I don't know. I don't use wax at all. So I think
Is it just aluminum hydrate and wax?
I think so. That's what I've seen people do. I think with this kind of lid, it wouldn't. I don't know if it would work. I think the overhanging kind. Is that what?
No, they were
They're
like
making
in
this now?
gallery, yeah, very similar.
I don't know. I guess it. I mean, there's so many factors. I don't know that it would work in my kiln, or it would depend on where it's at in the kiln too. Like towards the front of the kiln, close to the firebox, I think it would accumulate too much ash that it would run down and
Yeah.
stick.
I think these pots were definitely in drier places.
Yeah.
You can.
It would definitely work for the overhanging kind of lid. At the ranch, I know Doug Casebeer does that a lot, that aluminum wax. There's also another thing they were showing the students. I can't remember, but I was just like, I don't ever do that. I don't know. It's interesting teaching with somebody that does things so differently, and then also, usually when I go teach a workshop, as the teacher, I'm totally in charge, but at the ranch they have the interns, and then Ralph, the studio tech, or I'm not sure what his title is actually, but they give a lot of instruction as well, and it's kind of interesting when they're saying something different than what I'm saying. The way they wad, like for me and for most of my fire potters, wadding and loading the kiln is so important. Like, I think of that as glazing. And at the ranch, they like to load the kilns and have the interns and Ralph load the kilns. So it's like, it takes a lot of self-control to not do it that way. I don't know.
So they like load everybody's.
Yeah. Yeah, and they don't pre-wad any pots. They load, or they wad them right there as they're loading. And at home, I will pre-wad a lot of pots. It just makes the whole process so much faster. Anything that I think might possibly go on its side, I won't pre-wad. But like all my mugs, I'll pre-wad them. Like teapots, lidded jars, I know they're gonna have to stand up because you can't fire them on their side with the lid. So I'll pre-wad them, that kind of stuff. I feel like if it's not level, you just add another wad. That's, because the wads are hard at that point. You just add one more and that's soft that you can kind of push down a little, level it. I think that's their reasoning, that you can't press the wads down if they're already dried out. But it's so frustrating because they'll have students help them wad. They'll have shifts, just like firing shifts. You sign up to do a loading shift, and the students wad the pots and hand them to Ralph, and he loads the kiln. And so you're like giving up, letting someone else wad your pot. And like, for me, that mark is so important. Do you want 3 marks or 4? And the plate. Yeah, and even a cup, like, I always teach, like, you put 1 wad under the handle, right? So if you have 3, it's not going to tip this way if you have 1 under there. But a lot of times, if it's like a Unomi or something that doesn't have a handle, then I'll think about, like, where's my name, and, like, put wad on either side and then a little cross. Just, like, all those little details that if somebody else is wadding your pot for you, you're not going to think about that. Even the size of the wad. Do you want this big mark? Or do you want a little tiny dot? And I've been into those big, like on those salad bowls, like 1 big wad that leaves a big mark in the middle. I know, like Simon, he rolls coils and does the circle thing. A lot of times I think he's just sitting that wad on a pot. It's not even propping up another pot. Which, I don't know. It's just like glazing though, it's just a different form of decoration.
So when you were saying, like, with those bowl plates, whatever they are, bowl plates, that you do on top of mugs sometimes? Does that mean-
Or just other pots, mugs, or...
So that means you're wadding the top of your mugs?
No, the mugs will be on a shelf like this,
Yeah.
just standing up, and then I'll have a post, a kiln furniture, like something like this.
Oh, I see.
And
Oh,
then
and then
that
gotcha,
sits on-
alright.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
I
it
do like the
saves-
bottom side, it's always the better part.
Yeah, and it saves so much space.
Yeah, in fact, our last salt firing had so many plates in it, it was, the
Yeah.
stilt sizes are totally wrong, we wasted
Yeah.
a ton of space, so.
Good tip. Which way does it go?
So she's firing them, yeah, like upside down, the ones that have the big wads in the middle.
Oh, okay.
She's firing them upside down on a post, and then underneath them, the umbrella other pots. Right? Because see, Darren and I had all these plates, and we had just like, we just didn't work with the stilt sizes we had, so we had a lot of wasted space. And that last firing, because we had too many plates in that fire. Yeah, basically. But if you do that,
How did your plates come out?
not that good. I could sand them down and have them be better. But I don't know. There's like a lot of debris floating in there. I don't know why. Somehow wadding got floating around in our last firing, so I got a lot of grinding and sanding ahead of me. I'm glad to hear that she does all that grinding and sanding. I was like, okay.
It's a lot.
That's what we need something for the studio actually, like even to take outside. Because you can't grind and sand in here. There's just debris in the kiln and, you know.
It's not smooth.
Yeah, there's hot through here, sure.
Who did some of the salt fire?
Yeah, this is the worst, because this is the one that's got wadding at the bottom. I have no idea how it got there. See that
Gonna cut
material?
off some of the bottom. Or
Like that shouldn't happen, it should end up in the bottom of the bowl. It was on top of the kiln. Wadding floated around somehow. It must have got picked up by the. Never happened.
so will you make the
Yeah,
top
because it
will
was top of the
stick
kiln,
out
there's no
above
wadding
the
up there.
rim?
Look at how much of it
I
is.
don't think it will be quite.
So it's just gonna go sideways.
The bottom is
Yeah.
gonna attach at this point.
Oh, I see. It's
I sell bowls this size. For enough money that it's worth it. You know.
That is so cool. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, this one's, that one's gonna need a lot of sanding too, just because the glaze.
Continue that line all the way.
The glaze stuck to the wadding and, you know, that's gonna need a whole bunch of grinding.
You want the line of the bottom.
This edge, like I'm just trying to continue that all the way to the bottom.
There was some grass in there, and flax, and paintbrush. Yeah. Years and years ago. I just picked them and rolled a rolling pin on top and. But then I used them all.
So you're building the bottom part.
Yeah, so that there's
So it
more
goes-
area to attach to the
Rolling
bottom.
pin on it. Let it set up a little bit and then pull it out.
So I should have talked about this when I attached the top of the handle. I'm really looking at the spout and where it's attached, and I want the top of the handle to either be level or just slightly below where the top of the spout attaches. And then kind of the same thing with this point right here. I want this point to either be level with that or just slightly lower. Because I think if the handle is too high, it looks super awkward. If it's up here. I mean, even if this is straight, and I want to kind of continue that curve, but I think it just gives it a lot more lift if the spout is like just slightly higher than the handle. Touch it. Touch it here.
So you use like a garden sprayer to spray soda in your...
Yeah. That's always, I feel like that's always an issue.
It's totally an issue.
Yeah.
So I've kind of gone back to just doing salt. So.
Yeah. And then, for some reason, and I'm not sure if it's just something we're doing, or if this is really true, but the last bag of soda I got was dense soda ash. Have you ever used that, or do you get light soda ash? We've had a really hard.
There being an option.
We've had a really hard time keeping the mixture in suspension, and the sprayer getting clogged. And I've never had that happen. And so then we like tried, like we boiled the water first. Like I usually use hot water, and it's never. No, it
It
mixes
just
it fine.
dissolves and yeah.
Well, like we even boiled the water first, and it wasn't staying in suspension. And then we're like, well, let's just use baking soda instead of this soda ash. And I don't know if it was because the water was boiled, but that was even worse. Like, I've never seen. It's been a long time since I used baking soda.
I tried the Gail Nichols burritos one time too, and just broke it all up and threw it in the
That
salt
works
tray.
good, but it's such a mess.
The bottom of the kiln was
Yeah.
frightening.
I know
afterwards.
it's a big mess.
I was like, did I do that right?
Yeah.
I kept thinking it was because, like, have you seen, in her book, she looks like she's doing it right over the burner. And, like, there's a big distance in my kiln. I don't know.
No, I think it just makes a big mess.
It just makes
that
a big mess.
mixture,
It just does.
yeah.
Okay,
And then
so it
she,
wasn't just
like,
me. I thought I did something
Cleans
wrong.
it after every firing.
Yeah.
I think she just like hoses it out almost.
Huh,
It
there was
seems-
just all these chunks. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I felt like I was going to ruin my kiln if I kept doing that. But
I think so. I think it does. She was at the Bray. She was like right when I started. She was there for a few months.
yeah, no, my theory was it just...
Destroyed the kiln.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was just because, like, literally you see what in her picture, she's right over the flame, or where she puts it.
Her pots look beautiful, but I think it does destroy her kiln. And then a couple of the residents were doing that method for a little while because they learned it from her, and it's just like
Yeah.
it caused a lot of issues between other residents that were wanting to start a fire, and they need to fix that kiln.
Yeah, you need to grind that out or something. Huh. I didn't get the impression you could just wash that out.
I think
Hose it out.
I'm pretty sure that's what she does. But I think she's putting all that whiting in there, which is just calcium carbonate, so probably with the water it just breaks down. But I think it's like a lot of water, which can't be good for the kiln either.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I'm really curious about this dense soda ash though, or figuring out what we're doing that is so.
Like that was actually an option when you bought, like it actually said that? Because I've just
I
seen,
don't know that I ever
soda ash.
noticed before either.
No. You got it from the Bray, that's what happened.
I know, that's what it is. And yeah, and then like I don't believe half the stuff they tell me there.
Like I feel if you stored soda ash and there was moisture around, it would kind of, you know what I mean? Like it would clump a little or. Oh, like when you were mixing that glaze and it turned into rocks on you, and I couldn't get those rocks to like dissolve ever again.
Well, I learned my lesson. No,
That's how you remember stuff. Like you really screw up and learn stuff.
can't delay that process.
When I was a resident at the Bray, I had this critique with Chris Staley, and I asked him if he, I think I asked him something about overworking pots, and he told me if it looks overworked, it's not overworked enough. So I was like, that's awesome. I have permission to keep futzing with this. But it's so true, like those pots that are like so refined, I'm sure they're like, they look simple because they've had a lot of time put into them.
Snack break.
Sit. You should eat it. Sit. Give you some. Sit.
You don't throw it.
Nope, I'm gonna handle it. Just a little slab.